Thank you, Polly. I want to put it to you that I can give the Labour Party something the Tories don't have. A leader that people can relate to, whose background looks like their own, but who has the ability to connect with the voters that we've lost. A people person who can put the heart and soul back into the Labour Party. And that's what we need right now, because in my view, our problem is fundamental and far-reaching. People have lost sight of who we are and what we stand for. Labour, for me, is absolutely nothing if it is not about breaking down elites. But in government, we spent too long courting elites. And we also... And let's face it, we also ran our own party in an elitist way. Too many good Labour people were alienated from the government and consequently felt no joy or ownership of its achievements. Labour will look and feel different under my leadership. There will be more power to members to hold MPs to account. We will take the dead hand of stage management off party conference. Those are commitments I give to you. And we will put the parachutes away forever. I will talk with passion in this campaign from my own life experience about breaking down elites, because life chances in this country are still determined by the postcode of the bed that you are born in. I will challenge a cabinet of millionaires that already are cutting life chances without compassion. I will speak to the kids without connections who find it too hard to get on. I will speak to the lower income families who often feel trapped by their circumstances in a world of job insecurity and short-term contrast. And I will speak to the older people who sadly fear old age. And I will bring forward big, inspiring ideas in the best traditions of our party, a national care service to take away the fear of old age from too many people in this country. So if this speaks to your vision of Labour, if you want a party that puts people before business, and above all else, if you want to go out there and have it feel good to be Labour again, then I ask you to join my campaign. Thank you very much. I think the election changed a lot of things. I think it certainly showed us that the Lib Dems, in your own words, Billy, were certainly not the great leap forward, and I think we know that now. Also, it changed my own view of voting reform. I hadn't been somebody who'd argued for reform, but I just saw the impossible choice that some people faced in constituencies, whether to vote with their heart or their head. I mean, that really came home in so many constituencies. So it led me to believe now that change is necessary. And I think I will back AV, although we do need to understand what implications it will have for the Labour Party in a parliament where potentially the constituency boundaries are going to be redrawn. I just placed that caveat. But just on your big point about immigration, and Ed is right, we can't pretend that we haven't heard what was said to us on the doorstep. But Ed Miliband is also right that we can't say this isn't a debate about saying we don't want people to come in and we don't want free movement of labour. I'm never saying that. I will support free movement of labour across Europe because my own dad benefited from it in the 1980s and 90s, as did many British workers when work was hard to find here. What we have to do is deal with the consequences of a more mobile world. So we support free movement, but we say to people in their communities, but we'll also protect you in a more mobile world. So we will protect you as an agency worker or as a posted worker. And we didn't do that. And that weakened our argument then in saying to people that free movement is a good thing. And Ed is also right to say we should do more with housing. Personally, I would bring more private rented accommodation that is in so many of our northern towns and cities. Get that private rented accommodation back under the control of local authorities. And I think if we did that, we could have better access to social housing in our communities. And I think that would deal with the issues and give people actually what they're looking for. I don't believe there's any racism in the vast majority of people. They just want to see us dealing fairly with those issues. Well, I can remember graduating in the last recession, 1991. And the problem is, if you can't see a way forward, young people can really lose all hope. And then they really can get onto a path in life where they're not going to fulfil their potential. And Ed is absolutely right to say the Future Jobs Fund, we should really make a strong argument with conviction in Parliament to save it, because we can all think of young people in our constituencies who are on those placements, who have hope, who are moving forward, and to take it away is cruel, in my view, when they've been given hope of a future. But Labour has to have credibility on these cuts. We can't just say everything. We're going to have to lay down some clear principles to say, we will campaign against that, but we're going to have to accept that. But I think where you have a cut that affects the life chances of young people, that should always be a red line for the Labour Party, and we should vigorously defend it. I think we should also challenge some of the elitist noises that are coming out about higher education. You know, the idea that a young person from a constituency like mine or some of the others on this platform should go to the local FE college to go to university. And you know, that why? I mean, that is about saying there's a second class of education for some young people, and we should absolutely tackle that head on, as we should the reduction in university places, because again, it'll be those from lower income backgrounds who don't get into university. We should do all of those things. But my last point would be, I touched on it in my opening remarks. For me, there is a much bigger cultural point here about young people and work. And I made a reference to those ordinary kids without connections, because this is a passionate theme of mine, given my own background in life. It is very, very hard indeed for a young person whose parents aren't in the know, who can't afford to work for free, to get some of the placements in these glamorous worlds of politics, the media, finance. For them, it's a million miles away, and they just can't break into those worlds, and that perpetuates inequality in society, where a self-selecting world keeps offering the jobs to those that it knows. So I would say let's have a much bigger look at access to the professions, and all work experience, all internships, all placements, in my view, should be advertised by law so that they can be accessed by any young person in the entire country. I'll deal with the first bit of the question, or the first point you made about it being a good debate. It has been a really good debate, all the hustings so far. And just to make a very quick point, we were all, most of us, very loyal servants of the government. And I think you saw us out there. I mean that in the nicest way, of course. We're all friends now. And we made our arguments out there in a very loyal and dedicated way. And I think that people might see this as surprising now, but we can speak with our own voices much more. And I think that's going to be good for the Labour Party. I know people shouldn't see that as a negative, because I think that is just where we are. But in terms of the broad point of your question, I would say our problem was that the world changed with the recession and then the credit crunch. And it left us a little bit kind of wrong-footed, in my view. I said at the beginning, we'd courted elites. And for me, I'm not going to trash the record of the government, because like everybody else said, I'm very proud of what we did. But the heart of where we went wrong for me was this courting elites. An impression given that we were seduced by power, by glamour, by money. That's the impression that was given. So when it came to the recession, it looked like we were stepping in to support bankers rather than help the economy and support ordinary people. I'm just trying to reflect. And now, our job is to absorb how the world changed and how people's values have changed, and respond as a Labour Party to that changed world with different attitudes to tax and spending. Personally, I think we were too timid on tax throughout our time in government. And I say that not in anger, but just in a sense, I tried to make the argument for the reform of social care towards the end of the government. And actually, I personally thought we could have persuaded people about a care levy on estates, or as they called it, a death tax. I still think that's the fairest way to fund social care going forward. But we had got ourselves into a position where we just felt we just could never raise a new tax for fear of being pulled to pieces by the press. And we've got to move out of that. The answer to this situation, lastly, going forward, is it has to be a mix. We should support spending reductions where they make sense and where they don't cross the red lines that I mentioned a moment ago. We have to be responsible as a Labour Party there. But we should say, and make a principled argument to say, we should also raise tax where it's right to raise tax. And a tax on financial transactions would speak to the public mood right now. It would be the right response to the mess that we're in, and it would have broad public support. It's a Labour Party policy people could get behind, in my view.
I'm going to ask each of you this, but do you have a proportion of the amount that should go on tax rises and the amount that should go, or even a ballpark figure, and the amount that should go on cuts? Yeah.
Can I ring you back with that on Monday morning? I think the argument should be at this stage to say it shouldn't be all done through savage spending reductions. David made a very important point about deficits aren't morally a bad thing. We need to make sure that we get through this period where we relieve the pressure wherever we can, making the principled argument for the 50p tax rate, as we should do in my view, also making the argument for tax on financial transactions. And I think Labour really needs to get credibility in this argument in the coming months, and hopefully between us in this leadership election we can give some of that definition to the argument. Well, Fiona, my approach to this has always been that where there are areas of real educational failure, academies can be a good way of giving a new approach. But I would not want to see them imposed on local authorities, and I think that was what Ed did. I would go further, though, and say it is time, in my view, for the Labour Party to speak up more convincingly and with more conviction about the importance of comprehensive education. And I might say more than that, local authority-run comprehensive schools, because I believe with every fibre of my being in comprehensive education, to my very core. It's not just the breadth of opportunities, it's the breadth of backgrounds and abilities, and what that does to young people who come through, having seen a wide range of people, it in my view, brings forward more rounded, more adjusted young people who are ready to play their part in the world. And I'll never forget going to university and being confronted for the first time with people from private schools and being just basically knocked back by their confidence, their ability to make an argument, but also seemingly unaware of the people around them and what they were making of their views. And that, for me, explains the importance of comprehensive education. I have a real problem with parents going away and setting up their own schools. I think, as Ed says, it will lead to a two-tier education system. It will happen at a different speed in different areas, and I think we'll see very, very wide differentials in this country. And the final point I would make, and Ed made it very strongly about selective education, I don't support selective education. I'll go further and say I don't support grammar schools. If we are going to have the principle, as David was saying earlier, of decentralised decision-making, well, yes, the decision then should be taken at a local authority or county level. But let's have a ballot where every parent in that borough, with children in primary school, in secondary school, can have a say about the future of secondary schooling in that borough, because it is not right that we only ballot parents whose children might be benefiting from the status quo. So if that speaks to you, join the Labour Party and join my campaign.